I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up. Then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Matt Baxter is a serial entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Wedge, a leading one-way recorded video screening solution that empowers job seekers to present their authentic selves. Starting his journey at 15 with lawn care, he sold the business in 2015 and launched Wedge shortly after graduating from Hope College. Under his leadership, Wedge has raised over $10 million in funding and has become a trusted platform for talent teams seeking to enhance their hiring process. Beyond his work at Wedge, Matt is the host of The Matt Baxter Show, a podcast dedicated to exploring purpose, passion, and personal growth. Matt, welcome to the show.
Welcome everyone back to the Do Hard Things podcast with your hosts, Gabe and Lexi. And Matt, we just heard your bio. We're so excited you're here, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This should be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Listen, we're super excited. And just for the audience to know, Matt and I collaborate. I use his technology and he uses our services. So we're not only both entrepreneurs and love each other's background and what we do, but so much so that we actually collaborate and pay each other to work together because you have such a great tool and we love our partnership. So with that being said, I mean, we always like to hear about your origin story, right? You know, our guests on their show usually are some, very successful people, but usually they start in a space where they didn't know what they wanted to do. A lot of people don't know, what they want to do in school. They don't go to school for business or sales or marketing. So take me through that passion, right? When you were young as an entrepreneur, mowing lawns, right? And then leading a tech startup and revolutionizing the hiring process it's truly inspiring. So take us through that.
Yeah, I don't know if I classify myself as the successful category, but it's at least maybe a story worth what not to do in your career. But I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And when I was 15, my dad had a mower in his garage. And I was like, why don't I go knock on a few doors? And one thing led to the next. My very first lawn care account was a funeral home director. And so as a 15-year-old, I started reading basically obituaries in the news to figure out if I had job security the next day, which was kind of not the most like standard thing you would do as a 15-year-old. But kind of one thing led to the next with that business. And each summer, the grass kept growing and so did the business. And I hired my first full-time employee as a senior in high school. I went to college in a small Christian college called Hope College, which was about 3 hours away. So during that season, I was back and forth a ton. And when I was a sophomore going into my junior year, we had about 7 full-time employees doing landscaping and mowing. And I got approached by a property management company and they said, if you ever want to sell your accounts, let us know. And I said, yeah, that sounds good. And like 3 days later, sold the business. Definitely wasn't a big tech exit by any stretch of the imagination. Definitely still had to go work the next day, but it was a pretty cool opportunity. Learned a lot through that, and then was kind of shortly after had the idea for Wedge, partly around like reflecting with the lawn care because I didn't really care if somebody knew how to mow a lawn or weed whack. You can like teach those skills, but what you can't teach is can somebody shake your hand? Can they be personable? Can you trust them in front of your uh, customers? And it felt like on one side, started talking to a lot of business owners, and they kept all saying the same thing like resumes suck, hiring's hard, finding great people is a challenge. And then flip side of that, as a junior in college, I had a ton of friends who I would say were super talented, but maybe not the 4.0 GPA student. And it felt like they had a gap in the market where they weren't able to articulate who they were or share more about their story above and beyond just a GPA or something like that. And so the idea for Wedge came about, and graduated college a little bit early to basically start working on Wedge. And fast forward 10 years later, I don't know what I've been doing for 10 years, but we've been doing something because we're still here somehow. But it's been a blast. And so, on the career trajectory, going from mowing lawns to HR tech is not the most standard playbook, but it's been fascinating to go for kind of the bootstrap, add a couple more lawns, hire a couple more people to like VC funded company is very different, but it's been super fun. So yeah, been at it for almost 10 years now, and it's been a huge joy and learned a lot and made about every mistake you can and continue to do so, but we're here today. So that's a little my journey.
That's amazing. So let's double down on Wedge because we said it in the bio, but I really love the technology and because we're a user of it. So we obviously love it. But at the end of the day, a lot of companies who try to get into this space to make hiring easier, they're always thinking about the employer, right? They're always thinking about the company that they're trying to sell that technology to or sell that widget or process or software to. And I don't think they think about the candidates as much as you guys do. And you mentioned it in your intro just now about how there's a lot of companies out there that are having challenges in finding great people, but there's also a lot of great candidates that are having a challenge of showcasing their abilities. So the way I love about your product is that it's not just this AI tool, right? Which is everyone's doing these days, just another AI tool. It definitely has AI embedded into it, but it's not a replacement of the interview process. It's really an opportunity for us to have a much better experience from an employer's perspective. But I really feel that when I talk to candidates who are using the tool on their end of of the aisle, they really love it as well. So when you built it, walk me through how you decided, hey, you know what? We have to look at both sides here. It's just not company only and employer only type of approach.
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a couple layers to it. I mean, for one, when we first started, I would say probably the framework was more around the concept of being like a video resume or like a video cover letter. So that the design of it was like, let's create a platform to allow people to share their stories professionally, again, above and beyond a resume or cover letter, things like that. And then at the time, like the naive startup company that thinks they're going to change the world, you compare yourself to some behemoths in the space that have raised hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And one of the things that you can go on Reddit threads today that like video interviewing as a category is not super well received by candidates, partly because it's clunky technology. You have to download apps, you have to do, all these different things that doesn't really, it's just more of a checkbox to get through. Whereas we've wanted to take like truly a candidate driven approach because one, candidate experience is everything. And two, as companies, the way candidates go about the candidate experience is a huge representation of your brand. And if we can deliver a platform that allows companies to feel like they're actually represented well, and for candidates to experience that whole thing and walk away and say, that was actually not bad, like I actually enjoyed that application process, that sets companies further apart. And, Gabe, you get this running a company, but like not every day is sunshine and roses. There's a lot of like horrible days. But one of the coolest things about my job is like I'll log into LinkedIn and I'll have 20 to 50 random messages from candidates who are like, I did this Wedge thing. Just wanted to say thank you for actually creating like a good platform. Now it's take credit for that, but it's like I didn't build it. However, we definitely have done a really good job at like as an organization, and kudos to our tech team for building something I think is super candidate driven and something we're taking a lot of feedback on because I think it's one if not the most important thing about building a platform in this space.
I love that. And you've had awesome journey. I mean, starting a business at 15 is so impressive. What were some of those valuable lessons that you learned really early on that still stick with you today?
One of the biggest ones, so that funeral home director that I told you about was like 6 months late to pay me like $30, right? And it was like horrible. Like he just loved it, and it was almost like a game. He would like show me off his Mercedes and then not pay me for like 6 months. It was like, but this horrible game that he would play. But what I learned was like, be now you want to collect payments. That's an important part of business. But I learned to, I think, rather than be short sighted, and I think focus on, the short term cash right now, like take a long term play to relationships. And he ended up referring me to like 30 of our accounts, and like every time he had a funeral, he would compliment me to a lot of folks, and like a lot of our business came from that. So although he was a pain in the ass at times, like I've learned that even relationships like right out the get-go that may not appear as fruitful, like we all have something to learn from everybody we meet. And you don't know who knows somebody that could be your biggest account or biggest client or investor. And that's translated now. Like we've raised multiple rounds of capital, and I think we have 90 investors ranging, all across the country, and even a couple international. And half of those I didn't know, but they came from relationships that I've had with other people that have made introductions. And so for me, I would definitely say like one of the biggest things is like actually staying true to relationships. And that includes following up with zero purpose other than to check in. And yeah, there's times to go sell, and there's times just to build relationships. And I've found that like when you're building relationships and not selling, or sometimes when some of the biggest deals closes. So for me, I think like one of the biggest things is like, I hate to say how cliche it is, but your network is super important. But that comes down to like, are you building long-term relationships, or are you short-sighted and just trying to get something out of each opportunity? And that's typically when it's failed for me, when I've been short-sighted.
I love this origin story. Okay, so here's my question. I wrote a
Yeah.
post about this on LinkedIn a few months ago. My mentor said to me a long time ago, he said, Gabe, if you don't like where you are, move. You're not a tree. And I love that because, it puts you in perspective, right? Trees can't move, they're there forever. You know, People sometimes have a really hard time. Maybe they feel stuck, or maybe they feel like writer's block. Maybe they just, don't have, the courage to make a leap. But you went from lawn care to SaaS. And so there's a lot of people in our audience right now who are either founders like you, and they're trying to make a pivot, or they're trying to start or they're trying to launch another product or change industries. And then there's a lot of people in our space on this that are audience members that are AEs and SDRs that may, want to take that next promotion or leave a company that maybe it's not working anymore. How did you find that courage, if you will, to go into something, frankly, that is almost the exact opposite? Now, I understand you got the value of why hiring and finding good people from your original business led you to the idea of it, but it's still SaaS, and, manual, physical labor, if you will, is a lot different. So how did you make that jump, and what got you to the opportunity to make that leap?
I wish I had like a grandiose philosophical way of explaining that, but I mean, I started the lawn care because I could mow a lawn and make $30 versus go work 3 hours at a fast food restaurant. And it was like, well, why don't I go mow two lawns, and that pays for Mountain Dew money, or taking a girl to the movies or something like that. And it was like, why don't we keep going and mowing more and keep doing that, right? So the first adolescent stage was like, this is like just practically makes more sense. And then it was like, oh wait, I actually can drive kind of a cool truck, and I can make a few extra bucks and then keep growing it. And then all of a sudden, I actually get the chance to like create a canvas and paint my own world, even as a high schooler. Like that was a pretty cool thing. To then, when I sold the lawn care, like I had a little bit of cash at the time. I thought I was mega rich. Definitely was not, but like at the time, and it was like, why don't we go try to do something like that, but take a bigger swing that has a deeper impact? And I love the concept of people's story. I mean, I love the podcast you guys do, and I have one myself, and I'd love just hearing people's story. And it felt like there was an opportunity to build a business around giving people the chance to tell their story. It happens to be professionally in the job market. So honestly, like it truly started as like, this is an idea, feels like there's a need here, feels like there's a problem in the market. Why don't we take a crack at this? And Lexi, a little bit to your question, one of the things that I learned being a younger entrepreneur is a lot of people want to see you win. And especially like the college that I went to, I can't tell you how many like alumni reached out to me. It was like, hey, if you need some money, we'll invest. Or can we become clients? Or can we become early customers? Or like, we'd love to sit down and help. And I think, that changes a little bit as you get older, but like people actually really like betting on people taking a risk. And I think vicariously, a lot of people truly love betting on somebody that they probably couldn't have taken a risk or chose not to, and they feel guilty about that. And so that, for me, like, I wish there was, like, I really sat down and thought about running this company or building this thing. Like, I didn't. It was more, this is an idea. I talked to a few people and it turned into a better idea. And then it created some customers and we created some investors. And 10 years later, we have a company out of it. And so, to me, I think, like, part of it, and Gabe, similar to you, I've got a couple LinkedIn posts about this, but, like, one of my favorite concepts is, like, I think people love being like, be an alpha, be a lion, be all that. Like, I really think you should just be a cockroach and, like, literally just figure out a way to survive and live to see another day and do what you got to do that. And so, like, when it comes to building Wedge, like, there have been some horrible days, horrible months, horrible years, but also, like, if you keep taking swings, keep taking at bats, keep, building a network of people, like, things start to pay off. And so for me, I think, like, the leap has just been, honestly, like, keeping going and building the right people around us that share that similar philosophy.
Totally.
So I don't know if that answers the question at all, but hopefully that covers a little bit of it.
Yeah, definitely. Wedge has really significantly grown since starting. Can you walk us through some of those pivotal moments that fueled that growth and really allowed you to survive in the marketplace?
Yeah, so we really kind of first went to market with, like, beta customers in, like, 2018-ish. And kind of late 2018, early 2019, got a chance to pitch in front of, like, a lot of customers. And a lot of people gave us the same feedback. Like, video is the way of the future. This is awesome, but, like, we're just not ready right now for it. Excuse me. And then COVID hit, and COVID shifted everything towards video and towards a remote workforce. And in one sense, it looked like I was a genius because I launched a video company right before COVID. Pure dumb luck. But in the flip side of that, what was also happening that worked against us was, even though video was a big change, a lot of companies weren't hiring or actually, like, were letting go of people. So there was definitely a market that it created and allowed customer adoption to be way faster. But also, like, a lot of companies that we pitched in front of were like, we just don't have any candidates at all, and we're not going to do anything that would stop us from hiring somebody who walks in the door. Fast forward, the job market. So, like, COVID was pivotal in a good way, but also had some negatives just around the job market. Fast forward to the last, honestly, 2 years, the job market has changed entirely. You've got things like instant apply. You have a bunch more candidates entering the market, whether it's full-time or gig work. That has been not like a single moment, but a big shift for us where the need for our product has drastically increased, opposed to the COVID days where, like, if you had a job, or if you wanted a job, you can go get one. And people just didn't have quite the need for screening, where now that's, like, shifted drastically, which has helped us grow sizably.
That's amazing. So let's talk about raising money for a second, because again, a lot of companies, founders are listening to us right now, trying to do that, right, and try to navigate it. People, again, in the corporate world that want to start their own business, you raised over 2.6 million in funding, and that's no small feat. So what advice, what strategies, what were you able to do to really attract investors? You mentioned a little bit about just friends and family, colleagues at school, or former alumni, if you will. But how do you ensure that alignment, and how do you attract that money? And then also, how do you sell the company to investors versus sell the company to prospects? Because it's very different, right? So walk us through that.
Yeah, and also, if you want to add a quick update, I don't know if this is relevant or not, but we've closed just under 10 million kind of recently. I don't know if that's helpful or not. Not all in one check, but over a period of time. That's a little out of date, but
Yeah, that's
one
amazing.
one
Thank you for updating us. That's awesome. So
yeah.
10 million. So how did you do that? And where do you advise the audience to go to make those things happen?
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story and then I'll offer at least some advice or more what not to do. But the quick story was, I had this idea when I went to Hope, and somebody connected me to this alumni that was kind of disconnected from the college. And they said, hey, you've got a phone call at 10 a.m. on Monday. Don't miss this call. So I answered the phone at 10 a.m. and this guy named Bill, he picked up the phone. He's like, all right, I've got 3 minutes for you. Give me a minute on your business and give me 2 minutes on you. Go. So I quickly answered the best I could. And then he's like, all right, that's all I need. I'll be in touch. And I was like, no idea what just happened there. And 3 days later, he sends me an email and he's like, have you thought about this with your company? Just seems like a blurb in the hiring space. And he's like, can you talk later today? And I was like, sure. So he's like, how are you planning on like growing this thing? And I gave him kind of my, at the time, my BS like growth path. And he's like, all right, how are you going to fund this thing? And I was like, I've got a little money from my lawn care, like throw it at that. And he's like, no, no, no. He's like, let me invest a little bit of money and let's start there. And so that one just like fell into my lap. Like I had no intention, no idea, and no interest in what raising money was, but it just kind of happened. And this guy's a pretty noteworthy investor on the East Coast. And because we had him and he was okay with it, we were able to raise some capital from some of his friends, a couple local folks. So we just kind of put together our first round of capital. Majority of the money we've raised has been like in the category of high net worth individuals. We have one fund and one family office that have invested, but it's been predominantly kind of high net worth individuals, which is totally different than like VCs. So I have raised exactly $0 from sending my pitch deck to somebody, and they're like, "Man, I want to invest in that." Now, it could be we have a bad pitch deck, but I have not raised any capital that way. Almost all the capital that we've raised has come from a network of people that are typically business owners themselves or have been successful themselves who said, I like this idea. It checks the box. I think it's going to be impactful, but also like I'm betting on you and I'm making an investment in you, which if you're a founder out there, that sounds great at times, but also it's a level of pressure that sucks at times, right? Because you're like, all these people have bet a lot of money on me to go perform. But also in a cool way, it gives you a lot deeper of a sense of purpose to like, go be successful. And it's not just for financial return, but it's like there are people who have literally bet significant amounts of money to see me be successful and see our business be successful. And that to me, like, I think at days can be crippling and you don't want to get out of bed because of that pressure. But in the flip side of that, it's also like, man, this is the motivation that I needed to see another day and to come through it. So for us, like, there's definitely bigger, life-changing, go public type pitch decks out there that have probably raised a boatload of money, and those people are way better at giving advice than I have about that. But for us, it's been much more like getting the chance to tell your story in front of folks that have been successful and are willing to bet and take a swing with you and take a ride. And I think part of it comes down to having the energy and excitement because a lot of investors see that, and also having something that's impactful and a good business return. But most importantly, it's like we want to bet on people that we believe in. And whether you're hiring somebody or writing a check to invest, I think that's true for a lot of folks.
I love that. It's very impressive. And then going off what you said about networking, where do you really see LinkedIn and content stepping in there? Are you guys using that to really push content and leverage these networks?
Yeah. Another quick story if you're interested. I in 2017 drove out to New York City, and my girlfriend and I broke up, and I had a 13-hour car ride back home that I was like depressed, not having a great day. And LinkedIn had this auto populate feature where you could, when you wanted to connect with somebody, it would auto populate a new person. So I searched like CEOs and I just auto populated and reconnected with like 5,000 people. Okay. So I woke up the next day and I was like a trending person on LinkedIn because of this. Since then, LinkedIn has taken that away. But like I instantly connected with like literally 5,000 people that were all CEOs globally, all over the place. One of those individuals was a guy named Wade Burgess, who was a really early on employee for LinkedIn, had been really successful. And I shot him a note and I just said, hey, man, I see what you're doing. You seem like you have an awesome background. Can I grab coffee with you? And I didn't realize he lived in Chicago, and he didn't realize I didn't live in Chicago. And he's like, yeah, do you want to be at this coffee shop by 8 a.m. tomorrow? So I was like, screw it. I guess I'm going for a drive, and drove and met up with him. And we sat down and we kind of had the like, oh, you live 4 hours away sort of conversation. Like, I didn't realize that. And he will tell the story today. He's like, the reason I chose to bet on you, and he became an investor and board member and friend, was because you were willing to do that. Like that's like the kind of grit that I want to invest into. And so I think like you put that on paper, it's the dumbest idea in the world. And that could have been a flop of a meeting, but ended up being a really cool one for me. And I think like if you're willing to take risks and do dumb things and go do hard things, I think is the better way to frame that, right? If you're willing to do things like that, I think like you can start to build a network of people that I don't know, that you get inspired by and are inspired by you when you're willing to take a swing like that.
You teed this up perfectly because I was going to ask my next question, which I will ask anyway. But I always ask this on the show towards the middle here because, the context is I, like you, I grew up, doing manual labor. I grew up seeing my family and my cousins and my uncles work in, steel plants and factories and, restaurants. And so the only way when I was young that I knew how to make money, like you were talking about potentially working at McDonald's versus cutting lawns, like I was going to either be a bartender or work at the Ford plant. Like if I did everything my cousins did, that's what I would have done. And so I had one cousin that was in sales, and I'm like, oh my God, he always had the nicest car. He always dressed in white shirts. They never got dirty. I'm like, this is amazing, right? So my point is that a lot of people look when they use the word hard, they usually look at things that physically are intense, right? Here, building businesses, raising money, dealing in SaaS, it's difficult. Driving 4 hours one way, to get that investment and to get that friend now is life changing. But you could have easily not done that or said, you know what, I'm not in Chicago. I'm let's do a call. So what is difficult, and is it really that hard, or why is it that hard to do what it is that we do all day long? Which from the outside, we're on Zoom calls all day long making decisions. But is that really that difficult? I don't know. You tell me.
I think if you boil down one of the challenging, lonely, difficult parts about being a CEO, executive, owner, whatever category you want to put it into, is that by the time something reaches your desk, it's usually a problem. And it's usually the worst version of that problem. And if you have a good team, they've solved the problem well before it hits your desk. And by the time it arrives for you to have to look at, it's usually something that is either somebody doesn't want to solve because they don't want to make a difficult decision, it's a people problem, or it's a fire that nobody knows how to fix. And so I think it's just like when you wake up, it's just a matter of how bad are the fires today. They're all going to be there, and most meetings are going to be a fire. But it's like you're getting the worst of all case scenarios, and it's your job to figure out how to solve that. And I would definitely say like a skill set that I've been working on a ton is like the concept of like compartmentalization, right? Where I can go from a sales demo 2 hours ago to a investor conversation that went really well, to an investor conversation that went really bad, to being on a podcast with two amazing people, to then I got to go talk to team members that are disagreeing with each other and solve that. And it's like I can ruin my day by taking this emotion, bleeding into this conversation, bleeding into this, or I can do the best that I possibly can to be present, deal with this as it needs to be dealt with, and then move on to the next conversation. And it's not that you're like forgetting it or pushing it aside, but I think in order to be the best you can as a leader, as a team member, as somebody who ultimately people are looking up to, like you got to be able to compartmentalize and understand that like most of the time, by the time information is coming to you, it's probably the worst or maybe the best in rare case scenarios. But I think that's one of the things that makes like entrepreneurship so difficult, is the fact that you are dealing with the worst case scenarios in most issues that you have to solve. And a lot of times there is no right answer. I mean, for a long time, like I've one good thing I've done in my career is put around like a lot of mentors and advisors and really focused on that. But what I've learned is that, not in a bad way, a lot of times it's like I'm presenting these scenarios and they're like, let's weigh out the pros and cons, but it's ultimately your choice. And that's like the name of the game, where it's like there is rarely a right and wrong decision. And if there is, you're going to choose the right one. You're not going to intentionally choose the wrong one. And so I think that ultimately is what makes like just the whole concept around entrepreneurship, running a business, so difficult, but also so rewarding. When you get it right, it's pretty fulfilling. And one of the coolest things is empowering team members to be able to start making those decisions the best they can too.
Yeah. As a leader, how do you really foster a culture of authenticity and innovation within your team, especially wanting them to being an advocate for mentorship?
So I suck at this because I would say I'm not very good at delivering bad news. I like to deliver good news. I'm generally a pretty optimistic person. I love investor updates when I can share all the good things and then kind of brush under the rug the bad things, right? And so I think what I've learned is that with the right people and in the right moments, like sharing the struggles, whether it's cash flow, not growth fast enough, not like, I think when you build a team of resilient people, they actually appreciate that and respect that more, opposed to people who you get very concerned that it's going to blow up in your face if you share that. Now, I've had times that happens, but it's also helped me vet out who are the team players that are along for the ride and are willing to build in good times and bad times. So I think like one of the biggest things about being building a team of authenticity is being an authentic leader yourself, and that it comes with again, there's timing to everything, and there's the right people you share certain information with, but doing the best you can to let people into those. And I have found typically people level up when they're brought into that sort of stress, that sort of dynamics. Like, I've been super impressed with the resilience of people that I was kind of shared to deliver bad news to. And so to me, that's definitely something I'm a work in progress on, but trying my best to get better at.
That's awesome. So you have a podcast, and we love it. We're big fans of it, the Matt Baxter Show. And what was that purpose to starting a podcast? Because again, very different than running a software company. Like, why are you on a talking head show, right? Why is that so important? Right now, as to Lexi's point, we're seeing content really move into the B2B space in a big, big way. But usually it's not just because you want to get into the content game. Usually there's another reason why it is. And I'm assuming it's a similar reason to the reason why I started this show. But walk us through what your mission was there and how's it been going? What do you like about doing the podcast, and how has it been fruitful for you?
Yeah, so I started the podcast longer than that, 7 years ago. And the idea was like to interview HR leaders to better understand like the job market, right? To better understand, candidates and what that world was like, and ultimately to have them give advice to candidates. Partly it was like somewhat sales driven, right? Where it's like you get to talk to a bunch of HR leaders, but more so you get to be a platform that actually delivers value to candidates outside of just like the service you're selling. After 10 or 15 interviews in a good way, it was a lot of similar advice. So I was like, why don't we broaden that a little bit to more the concept around story? So one of the questions that I ask is like, what gets people out of bed in the morning? And what is it that drives them to be more than just, I'm showing up for a paycheck, which there's nothing wrong with that. And I actually love when people admit that, because it's like, now I know what you need, right? That's super helpful. But to me, like the purpose behind the podcast was like, I want to, again, create a platform to get to know and share people's stories. And one of the coolest things that I know you guys get to experience is like, there's nothing better than elevating somebody else and giving somebody else a platform to speak to. And it's super fulfilling for you guys. You get to, not that I'm anything of value, but you get to interview people, you get to learn a ton from them. And it feels good at the end of the day to like share somebody else's story and promote that. Like, there's a lot of value in that. And not because this was the reason I started any of that, but the relationships that I had built by having a podcast and the people that I've gotten a chance to meet because they're willing to do the show. And then afterwards they're like, tell me about your business, or I want to learn more about you. Like, again, not that that's the reason you do any of it, because you can also sniff the people out that are doing it for those reasons. But if you're genuinely elevating people and helping them share their story and promote them, a lot of good things happen because of that. And so to me, it started as a way just to like learn a lot and get to meet some really cool people. And it's just evolved into be a pretty cool platform that kind of takes you away from work, but also at the same time, you get to meet a lot of cool people that you end up you can be doing business with as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Bringing on the podcast definitely brings so many cool relationships and so much out of it. But you've mentioned wanting to be remembered as someone who helps push individuals closer to where they want to go. Can you share a story where you witnessed that firsthand?
Yeah, actually, the guy that I grabbed coffee with, this is probably on theme with the Do Hard Things podcast. The guy that I grabbed coffee with. So, to set the stage very clearly, I am not a runner. I hate running. Running is stupid. It's a dumb sport. Nothing's good about it. It's horrific. I have since then done 2 marathons and an ultra, but like with zero training. And like basically it was like Friday night, maybe a couple beers in, decided to commit to doing it on Sunday sort of situation, to be very clear. So I was kind of in this, like, I would say slump a little bit, and was like, you know what, I need to go do something insane. And this pastor that I'm on a board with is a big time runner, and he was doing this crazy thing called the Baja Traverse, and that's 100 miles across the Baja Peninsula over 3 days, like literally going up and down a mountain. And again, need to emphasize, not a runner, hate runners. Joining a family that does turkey trots is like my biggest concern of all time, like, just to be very clear about that. So my buddy Wade, I was telling about this, and he's like, you know what? I'll do that with you. And I'm probably not going to train either. And let's just go do this thing together. And Wade's mid 50s, like decently good shape, but not a runner also. And he ended up like doing it with me. And he's like, you know what? The only reason why I said to do it is because you're doing it. And this is going to be a fun 3 days together. And so we had like literally a trip of a lifetime that absolutely sucked. And I still have blisters to this day. But it was one of those things where it's like, man, this is like a pretty cool platform to like get to spend with an amazing human that I look up to. But in one sense, like, I pushed him to do that. Kind of a crazy, dumb idea, but to me, that was something that he still talks about 2 years later since doing it. And I've seen him talk about it on podcasts, and I've seen him like speak on stage about it. And that just was like a small way that I got a chance and a cool way to push somebody who's a mentor to me and I really look up to. And it was like, man, that was a pretty cool impact. So I guess that's the
Incredible.
off the cuff story that I have for you.
So my takeaway is you don't like running.
No, yeah, love it. Big fan. Sign up for a 5K tomorrow.
I love it. So let's talk about the future here in closing, right? Because we have three things happening right now. We have this shift in AI, where everyone is scared that AI is going to take their job at every level, right? I've heard of AI CEOs coming out soon, but no, seriously, like AI is really revolutionizing the marketplace in regards to people. Then we have the remote revolution, right? COVID is obviously accelerated that more than ever. And I don't see, companies going back. And even though some are trying to, it's extraordinarily difficult. And most of them are hybrid. And then thirdly, we have this tech platform, to your point, where everyone's video centric. Video is becoming more and more and more and more a part of our lives. FaceTime, the TikTok, all the socials, and now even LinkedIn have very video driven, very video focused. Whether it's async content, I'm investing in companies right now that are very video focused in every way. And so, what are your thoughts on where Wedge is going to be and where the marketplace is going to be when it comes to this people versus AI, or this remote versus in office, and this video versus text based communication? How do you see the outlook over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I have a lot of times, whether it was like starting a business, whether it was having an idea about something, or I even day traded back in the day. I am pretty good at like seeing the way things are going to go, but my problem is I'm always way too early and way too quick to jump on things, which is just as bad as being wrong. But like, you're just early, right? And you're like, man, I had that idea 10 years ago. So one of the areas that I've actually been super intentional about being behind the curve is AI in the hiring space when it comes to actually telling companies who to hire. So there's actually a lot of like lawsuits in our industry around companies taking all this data and then telling you this is the person that you should hire for bias. Yeah, a lot of bias reasons, a bunch of reasons all related to that. And so what we've actually done is taken like more of a way step back and saying, we're in the business of helping companies make better decisions around who they hire, and we want to make that more efficient for them. And yes, we're leveraging AI. Yes, we're starting to expand into various different features that allows companies to make those decisions better. But ultimately, like where we've wanted to be in the market is be a provider to come alongside to help companies make better decisions, not tell them who to hire. And so, although that's not really answering your question around like the way the market's going, I think that you're going to see a ton of tailwinds, and we're also starting to see some of those big time AI companies fail because I think they made all these over promises around removing all these needs for people. And yes, some of that's going to be correct. Some of that is probably a good thing. But I think there's been all these promises around AI platforms solving all these different things, but they're not actually getting to the root of a lot of issues that companies are solving. And so, from a business perspective, we've actually probably been a little slower to the market than what we could have been, mainly because we've been trying to best understand how to deliver value to clients versus slapping some AI on the logo and making it seem like we're the next best thing. So I would say like for organizations trying to think about the future, like get back to the roots of what business is comes down to completely problems or solving problems, right? The car disrupted the horse and buggy, but then created the gas station network, created the highway network, created all these different things that came of that. Like AI is going to disrupt a lot of things, and then there's going to be a ton of byproducts that are going to come from that. I've never considered like the best industry to be in right now is being a plumbing company, because think about all the data centers and all the infrastructure you get to build around plumbers and electricians that are going to be supporting those massive data centers. AI changed that market, but still created buildings that need toilets to flush and need lights to turn on. And so we think it's going to change this entire market. I just think it's going to slightly shift the markets that we're currently doing to begin with. And they might look a little different, but a lot of the same needs are still going to be there, or they're going to slightly evolve. And that's why I think a lot of opportunities are going to come from that. So I think I answered one of the three. What are the other two? Or
no, you answered it. Plus row.
Okay.
I got 3 for 1. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, you've been awesome, Matt. Thank you so much for your time today. Who is the person that should reach out to you, and where should they do so?
Man, I would say if you're going to reach out to me, just expect to not get any advice, but more what not to do. So whether you're an entrepreneur trying to figure this thing out, whether you're a talent acquisition or hiring team looking to solve some of the headaches in hiring, you guys can reach out to us right on our website, wedgehr.com, or you can email me directly. It's just matt@wedgehr.com. Happy to connect with folks, whether you're an entrepreneur scratching your head, struggling, or whether you've got the next best thing. Certainly love to support. And if our product can ever be of help, we'd love to have a conversation too.
Matt, we appreciate you. We love your technology. We love your vision. We love your podcast. Thank you so much for all that you do in the market. We're glad you stopped cutting lawns and got into this space with us. And thank you so much for your stories and your words of wisdom. We appreciate you, Matt.
I love it. Thanks, guys, so much. This was awesome.